Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the Love Fruit podcast. And today we have another special guest, and that is Ashley Chong. And Ashley is well known from Instagram, where she has over 50,000 followers. Actually, I think it's closer to 55,000. And her name on Instagram is Raw and Radiant. Is that right, Ashley?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Raw and Radiant.
Raw and Radiant.
RAW. Yep. AND. Yep.
So Ashley, about eight
Go ahead.
years, yeah, about 8 years ago, Ashley started to research health and nutrition and was looking to lose weight. And instead of going along with a lot of the things that the doctors were telling her, she decided to do a raw vegan diet. And from there, she was able to have a really great success with weight loss, and she's been inspiring others. She's been on featured on People magazine, Forks Over Knives, Mercy for Animals, different, I guess these are films and different things like that. And obviously it's been inspiring a lot of people on Instagram. So Ashley, is there anything else you want to share with us about your story?
That pretty much sums it up. In 2012, I was looking to, get my body healthier, and I was, looking to lose weight for my sister's, wedding. And, I was not really awake at the time. So my first plan was to, kind of go to the doctor, see what they were saying, and go the traditional route. And they were trying to put me on medication and give me shots and suggesting surgery and things like that. And it just didn't really sit right with my soul and with my spirit. So I kind of did some work on my own, started educating myself. I did that for about 2-3 weeks, and I came across veganism, which I knew about, plant-based diets and all those things, but I kind of really studied it, for those few weeks. And then I said, on March 31st, 2012, I said that this is it. And April 1st, I'm going to go raw for 30 days and I'm going to see how it goes. And by day 27, I said I would never eat cooked again because just how good I felt. So that just kind of sums up my story a bit.
That's amazing. Yeah. So let me ask you, were you brought up on a conventional diet, or how did your upbringing look like?
Well, my dad is a Chinese Jamaican and my mom is an African American from the United States. So combined, it was definitely a very conventional type of diet. I wouldn't say I ate a lot of fast food. I didn't eat tons of fast food, but it was lots of meat, lots of dairy. Especially I had an all Chinese grandmother, and she would make lots of pork and, traditional foods like that. So I just kind of grew up on a lot of traditional, like fatty animal foods, I would say. So there wasn't really an emphasis on fresh fruit. If we did have fresh fruit, it was always after our meals, because my grandmother did always have like lots of oranges and things around, but it was never really the focus of the diet at all.
Sure. And what was your experience of, were you overweight as a child as well, or was it just when you became an adult, or what kind of happened?
Well, I would say looking back, I was overweight as a child, but didn't really get bad until I kind of got into adulthood after I left high school. I was a soccer player my entire life, and I still play, or football to you guys, but I was a soccer football player through growing up, you know what I mean? And when I stopped and continued to eat the way I did, I just kind of, blew up and got really unhealthy and really sick. So the big weight gain came, after I left high school.
And did you suffer any other health consequences as a result of putting on the weight and the diet you were on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I went to the doctor the first time when I wanted to lose weight, and they were taking my blood work and they were checking me out, they told me that I was pre-diabetic. And, that was a big wake up call for me as well. And that was probably a big part of the reason why I didn't go that route with them and, take things to cover it up. I just started, educating myself and, how do I fix this pre-diabetic state? My body is obviously not happy.
Wow. So what age was that? You were pre-diabetic?
I was 21.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's really young.
Yeah.
So you decided to kind of research it yourself. Did you have a background with science or research, or what was your kind of educational
Yeah,
background? Or
yeah, I was actually in school for I was actually in school to be a physician assistant, and my mom is a nurse, and I was, kind of like in that medical, background field, like going to school, doing those things. So yeah.
Hmm. And what were the first things you came across, or where did you go first to try and find information when you decided to research weight loss?
I really honestly just, I went to Google and I started reading tons of articles,
Hmm.
and which kind of sparked my interest. And so once my interest was sparked, I just dove in. I ordered books. I went to the library, anything I could get my hands on um, that educated me on a plant-based diet. I read it, and I read hundreds and hundreds of books from different authors. I've I went on Instagram. Instagram was very new then,
Yeah.
but there were still a lot of people, tons of people eating, living the lifestyle. So I followed them, and that helped tremendously. And just seeing how they were doing, that helped tremendously, along with educating myself through those books and through those articles, and just reading and seeing people's journeys. And I was like, well, I can experiment on myself, you know what I mean? So, and that's when I just did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And did you were you resistant at first to the idea of changing to a vegan type of a diet, or was that
uh,
something you embraced pretty quickly?
well, I can kind of go back a few years. Okay, so I was 21 at the time all of this happened. But when I was in high school, I had a teacher, and she would always tell the class how she was vegan.
Hmm.
And at that time, I was like 16 years old. And I would always say to myself, oh my God, that's crazy. I would never do that. Like, vegetarian is one thing, but completely vegan is, completely crazy. Like, I'm not going to do that. So that was age 16. And, that was just in the back of my head. So fast forward to age 21, when I started, researching and reading and educating myself on a plant-based diet, I actually embraced it, because for some reason at that point in my life, it made so much sense. You know what I mean? And I was
Yeah.
like, this makes sense. I don't know if I just got smarter, my brain grew. I was 21, but I was like, this doesn't make sense to um, clog my body with animal
Right.
protein 3 times a day, and to have drink dairy and eat cheese. That's causing inflammation, and that's causing my body to get sicker and sicker. And it just really made sense. So to answer your question, I definitely embraced the idea for sure at that point, and I was very excited to do it.
Nice, nice. And what were the first things that you noticed when you start, or what were the first changes you made, and what were the what was the progress there, and what were the changes that you noticed in your body?
First, if I, we're just trying to remember, just releasing a lot of water and a lot of waste. How I did it is I started, eating tons of fruit. I was just trying to have, I had all raw, you know what I mean? So my body was taking in some nutrition, I would say, some nutrients, but it was more about releasing a lot for me in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, I lost a lot of water weight. I could feel the bloat going down, and I just felt good. And that first year was a lot, a lot of just releasing toxins. And then after that, after, a year or a year and a half in, you start to feel a lot of nutrition, because your body can assimilate so much more when it's clean. So.
Hmm. Hmm. And who was like your initial? I know you said you read a lot of stuff and came across a lot of information, but was there any specific, uh, author or hero or influencer that you liked the most, or that gave you the most help or most information?
I would say like my big mentor, I think, and just kind of following him on Instagram and YouTube, would be John Kohler, Growing Your Greens. He's
Oh,
my
nice.
favorite person.
Hmm.
I love to see him grow his own food and then to juice it. And I always kind of looked up to him. He was really great. I came across a few articles of people who did raw for a long time. I don't know their names. It was so long ago, but
Hmm.
she inspired me a lot. I have no idea what her name is, and I wish I did. But I saw her 30-day transformation pic, and that was um,
Yeah.
a big kind of like, oh, I'm definitely going to do this type thing. She inspired me a lot,
And did you
but I don't know her name.
did you jump into Raw? pretty much straight away, or was it plant-based first and then to raw? Where did it go for you?
I went completely raw. I was eating chicken on March 31st, and I was a complete raw vegan on April 1st, 2012, and I have been raw ever since. So I
Oh
went
my
straight
God.
from standard American to raw, like literally overnight.
That's amazing. And while you were doing that, like what kept on inspiring you to keep going?
Just how I felt, and just I continued to educate myself, and I really learned to listen to my body. And for the first time in my life, I felt very good physically. At
Mm.
21 years old, I shouldn't have an issue running. Like I said, I was a soccer player, and I hated to run. You know, I love the sport, and I love my skill work, and you know, I got good footwork and all, but I hated to run. And once I went raw, it was so much easier. I felt so good. I could breathe. My mental clarity got so amazing. And I think the biggest thing was the spiritual transformation for me, because I felt so connected to the earth, and I felt so connected to the seasons and the food that I was eating. And I
Mm.
just had like a whole mental and spiritual transformation as well. A lot of people see the physical, but that mental transformation made me keep going, because I felt like it seems weird when I say this to people, but I felt like I was just like downloading tons of information. Like my
Yeah.
brain was just like, this is right. You know what I mean? And I just felt so good, and I still do. So that's why I continue to do it.
Were you a spiritual person before that?
I'm sorry. Can you
Were
say that
you
again?
were you a spiritual person before that?
I was. I actually grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic schools my entire life. So I was really religious.
Hmm.
Um, but the connection, I guess, is a lot different, like spiritually, like to actually feel connected to that spirit that grew that fruit, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you're intaking that, like you're intaking the sun, you're intaking all of those vibrations, and all those vibrations are connected, you know what I mean? And so when you're eating from the earth, you're feeling that, and you're feeling that Mother Earth vibration, and it's completely different than just like going to church.
Yeah, and when you went raw, is there any particular program you were following, or did you work it out yourself? How did that go for you?
I worked it out myself. I said I was just going to eat anything that was raw at the time. I didn't, you know, focus on food combining. I didn't focus on you know, keeping my fats low at that time when I was transitioning or anything like that. I just said, hey, I'm going to eat raw. I'm going to eat as much of it as I need to feel satisfied these first few days. I'll try out a few recipes, and that's what I did, and it worked. But no, there was no specific
Mhm.
plan at all.
What does a typical day look like for you on a raw vegan diet?
Typical day, lots of fruit, lots of hydrating fruit. Is really like a typical day for me. And that could be, and it's seasonal. So right now here we have lots of citrus. So I'm having lots of citrus.
Mhm.
And I was talking about it on Instagram this morning. I'm doing a lot of coconut water right now because it is winter time, and I don't have lots of watermelon and lots of cantaloupe and peaches like I normally would. Um, just year round. This is just like the slow time of year in January, February. But so I'm drinking lots of coconut water now. But I'll have salads in the evening sometimes, and sometimes I just have full, you know, fruit days, just depending on how I feel. Lately, it's just been lots of fruit one day, and then I'll have like a fruit and a salad day the next day. But
Oh, that's
so let me
amazing.
go through a typical day. I'll go through a typical day. So I'll
Sure.
have like coconut water in the morning, and then I'll have like a big mono meal of fruit, whether that's oranges, whether that's watermelon, I'll have that. And that usually keeps me full for a while now. I'm 8 years in, so my body's adjusted a lot. But that usually keeps me pretty good. And then I'll have more fruit if I need to. And then maybe a green juice if I'm feeling, you know, like I need it. And then I'll have a salad. So that's kind of like a typical day for me
That's
with a little
that's
fat
awesome.
in a salad. Yeah.
It sounds like you keep it quite low fat though.
Yes, I definitely have progressed to that point after 8 years. Your body kind of naturally doesn't feel as well when you're stuffing yourself with nuts, and you know you're stuffing yourself with avocados. Early on when you're transitioning, they help keep you satisfied. But yeah, throughout the 8 years, I've evolved to be more low fat.
Mm. That's great. Um, how did your friends, family, colleagues react when you first started to do this?
They were really apprehensive at first. They were just like, "What are you doing? What is raw? You need to cook your food. This doesn't really make any sense." And they just didn't know. They weren't really educated on it at that time. So it was just kind of like, "Are you sure you're okay?" And my husband, well, he was my boyfriend then, my now husband, he was like, "Well, you can do that. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy, but I support you." And this, remember I said I did this in April.
Yeah.
By October, he was vegan. And
Oh,
then by
wow.
January, he was raw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he stayed raw for 3 years with me after that. He kind of, once we had our daughter, he kind of went through a little cooked phase, but he's been back to raw. But
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
he went raw for 3 years. Yeah.
Do you think that's been important for you, that he's made that change as well?
I think so. I think that it really helps it work, and I can make him meals, and he juices for me, and it's just really kind of mutual. And I feel like it is important a lot, like that we kind of transition that way. I don't know, looking back, if it would have been like crazy if he didn't, but it definitely brought us together a lot because, like I said, we were just dating at the time, and we met in high school. So we were dating since 15 years old, all of that. But when we doing it together, we kind of went through that spiritual transformation that I was talking about. He kind of went through it too.
Yeah.
And us kind of doing that together really brought us close. And that's when we actually decided to get married. We were sitting eating fruit one day, and we were just like,
wow.
yeah, and we were just like, let's get married. So I definitely think that helped bring us even closer than we were before.
That's fantastic. And what about family and friends now? Are they kind of used to it now, or do they still question you about it?
Oh no, they're absolutely used to it. And almost all of our family and friends have at least tried plant-based. And all of them, 100% of them have increased their plant-based intake. No one drinks milk anymore that we know of. They still kind of have some animal products in there, but their health has increased so much more. And then at least 20% of our family and friends have gone completely vegan. So no one's raw yet, but
that's amazing.
They've definitely increased their plant-based.
Why is raw? Why is it raw for you and not just plant-based? What's important for you about
that? Because being raw, I feel like keeps you as close to nature as possible. It keeps you as close to how nature intended the human body to eat. So that's really why raw is important for me. Raw is important because the nutrition stays intact. And when the nutrition stays intact, it can heal your body or allow your body to do what it needs to do better. It keeps your energy levels where it needs to be. And the nutrients in the raw food assimilate and just digest a lot better. And I feel like and I don't feel like it, I know that you're getting so much more than you would if that same product or that same plant was cooked. So.
And have you met other people that are raw? Is there a community of people in South Carolina that do, or is there the raw vegan restaurants or cafes or anything that you visit there?
Well, that's pretty interesting that you asked me that. When I first went raw, there was a restaurant called Sprout, and it was a completely raw restaurant. And by the time I, visited the restaurant, they kind of switched to, cooked and raw. And that was the only restaurant that's been in my area ever. And they ended up closing in 2018. So as of now, there's no raw places near me at all. There's just starting to be vegan places, not too much, nothing that I would personally really eat at because it's mostly processed vegan foods, but it's getting better. To answer your question about me meeting other people, I did meet some people in the beginning that, just through travel and, just through social media, but there's really no community here of raw vegans. It's like me and my husband.
You mentioned you had connections to Jamaica. Have you ever went to any places like that to experience the different fruits there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my family has property in my dad's home that he kind of grew up in is down there. So at least once a year I go down there and I visit. And my grandparents' property down there that I was speaking of, it has soursop trees and a pomegranate
Oh wow.
tree and an ackee tree and a coconut tree. And yeah, and the soursop tree I love so much. And it has like a plum tree, a cherry tree, and it is an amazing place. And my dad always tells me stories about how how he planted, so and so as a kid, and how my grandmother, planted these, and how he would pick mangoes off of this tree. And it just really kind of, makes me feel so good,
Mm.
knowing that that all that's there for me to have. And no one knew at the time that, his daughter or their granddaughter would be eating the way they do. But when I go
Yeah.
there, I don't have to buy anything if it's in season, you
Amazing.
know what I mean? Because it's literally all outside of my window. But
Amazing.
I love going there and, having, because there's young boys all around. And if you give them like, $1, they'll run up the tree and, pick all the mangoes for you. And yeah, I love it there. And I love the fruit there is so amazing. And it's definitely a
Mm.
lot better than it is here in the States, but I love it. And they do have actually a lot of raw and plant-based restaurants down in
Hmm.
Jamaica. And it's actually
Hmm.
a lot more than it is here where I'm living now, because a lot of Rastas, like they eat itol, is what they call it in Jamaica.
Right.
Vegan is itol.
Hmm.
And so there's tons of people that kind of resonate with the same type of vibe that I do. So it's a lot easier to eat down there because, one, the fruit, two, there's living food restaurants everywhere. And the living food restaurants are not like full of fat and they're not full of nuts, and it's just great fresh food. So yeah, I love
Wow.
visiting down there. Yeah.
So you'd recommend a little visit there to people that are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if anyone does go to Jamaica and they go to Kingston, try Me Hungry Now. It's called Me Hungry Now in Kingston. It's so good. They have fresh pressed like June plum juices. They'll have just amazing juices that you won't find anywhere, because you
Mhm.
go to a raw restaurant or a juice bar, you find the typical apple, kale,
Yeah.
and like their juices are just completely amazing because they have all the exotic fruit to do it with. So it's just super
Fantastic.
great.
Let me ask, what would be like? I think soursop's one of my favorite fruits actually. What would be some of your favorites from either Jamaica or anywhere really?
I love soursop too. But I love sweet sop. I love a good jackfruit has probably
Mm.
got to be my favorite. I love a good jackfruit. If I can just smell that jackfruit and just like dig in, I think that's probably my
Yeah.
favorite. But then like you think about a mango and it's like, oh, you get a good mango and then that's really good. And then it's like a watermelon and that's really good. I just get so
Mm.
excited. But it's really honestly like anything I'm eating at the time that's in season.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's my favorite.
This describe ackee, because a lot of people probably haven't come across ackee, and it's basically a tradition. It's like a native Jamaican fruit, I believe. Um,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah. So
unusual as well.
yeah, it's a savory fruit, and it's the Jamaican national dish. But what's kind of crazy about ackee is that it's a myth, but that you can't eat it raw because you'll get really sick or you can die from it. Okay, so the truth about that is if it's not fully
Mm.
ripened by the sun on the tree, you can get sick. So the way nature intended it, like any fruit, you should be eating it when it's ripe. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're waiting for the sun to open up that ackee, it's completely fine to eat raw. I eat it raw all the time. But to go into the flavor and more about it, it's a fatty fruit and it's savory. A lot of people compare it to maybe like an egg texture or an avocado texture. But you can to kind of describe it more, if you put it in a blender, it would get creamy like a guacamole. But when you eat it, it has
It's
some people
excellent.
say a cheesy
Yeah.
flavor. It's just like a savory, not
Hmm.
sweet, not
Hmm.
juicy, but it's really delicious. I like to blend it up and use it as a dip or put it into some romaine lettuce leaves and eat it like that.
Oh wow.
Um, or I will just take it out of the pod and I'll just, just eat it like that, straight as is, but it's super good. It could be an acquired taste, but like I said, I grew up on it in the cooked form. So kind of, eating it raw wasn't, too bad.
Amazing, amazing. What would be some of the other sort of practices that you feel are important for your health, outside of the diet?
Sunlight. Sunlight's a biggie because that is food in and of itself, and you get nutrition from the sun. So getting a lot of sunlight and fresh air is absolutely important to a healthy lifestyle. And meditation and being mentally clear, that's absolutely a part of, a healthy lifestyle. And exercise goes hand in hand with the diet because you need it, you know what I mean? And you need to move your body, and our bodies, just like I was saying earlier, like, okay, so nature intended our body to eat these foods, these raw foods, and just how nature intended us to do that, nature intended us to move, it stimulates our appetite for those raw foods, and it helps our digestion. When we're moving, our body's going to digest better. And when we digest better, we assimilate those nutrients from those raw foods better. So definitely exercise, sunlight, fresh air, meditation, all of those good things that you hear about all the time.
Fantastic. And did that all come naturally to you once you started to change your diet?
Absolutely. Like I said, I felt so connected. I wanted to go outside. I wanted to walk. I wanted to run. I wanted to meditate. I wanted to try yoga. I wanted to get into more of those spiritual practices. And that's why I love raw food so much, because that vibration from those foods really jump-started all of that in me.
Amazing, amazing. So you were featured in a bunch of things, I think People magazine, and a few films, Forks Over Knives and things like that. How did that all happen?
Okay, so yeah, I was on People magazine, and they had seen my transformation on social media, and they saw how I was eating, and they sent me an email, and they were like, "We really love your transformation, and we'd like to do an interview with you." And I was like, "Sure." And they flew me out to LA. I did the interview and took pictures, and I ended up getting featured on the cover for half their size. And it was really just an amazing experience to be able to have my story being told on that national platform. You know what I mean? And people could see that you can be healthy, and you can, and that you should be eating a variety of colors, and that you should be eating a lot of fruit. And just to kind of put that seed into people's head was just amazing, time for me. And I felt really proud of that. In regards to Forks Over Knives, I wasn't in the actual film, but I was featured on their website a lot of times. And they took my story, me and my husband's story actually, and they asked us all about it. And, we did an interview there, and they featured us there. And it was just amazing, like I said, to be able to share my story. And that's why I love doing it so much, because if one person even sees, this interview, and they decide, like I did, to, hey, let me try it for 30 days, and their life changes like mine, then hey, it's worth it,
Yeah. And you've got a really big following on Instagram. How long have you been doing that, and what's helped you be successful with that?
Well, I talk about this a lot, but I had my Instagram, I started my Instagram really maybe 6 months before I went raw. And I used the platform as just maybe a journal for me at first. And I was like, okay, well, I'm eating this, let me take a picture of this. There was really nobody interested at the time. And I just kind of kept, taking pictures. I never intended for my Instagram to be a business like it is now. I never intended for my Instagram to kind of blow up like it did. It was just something that I was doing in my personal life. But I guess the more that I shared, the more people were interested, and the more people kind of, were inspired. And so it kind of just kept growing, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. And I love to share. And so people started asking questions, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep sharing, and I'll keep sharing. But I think just what made me successful in that way was just really being authentic and not, trying. There's a lot of, I never really think of the term influencer, when I think of myself or anything like that, because that was never my intention. There are people now who are just like, okay, well, my goal in life is to go be a, Instagram influencer, you know what I mean? And it's it's just never like that for me. It was just it just happened. And
Yeah.
I think just being authentic and, you know, my content is my lifestyle. You know what I mean? I'm not
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I need to go do this, this, and this, like most people do if they're, you know, trying to, you know, go on social media. I don't do that. It's just like, okay, well, I had this for breakfast and I gave that to my daughter, and it's just kind of, it's just my lifestyle, and it's very authentic.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me ask you, for beginners that are listening to this, what would be your advice for them?
Just to really educate yourself, follow anyone who eats raw, anyone who's like has, even if they're not 100% raw, maybe they're 50% raw and they post, you know, their fruit meals or they post their salads, follow them. Stop following the people who are, you know, eating the meat. Stop. If you see that on your timeline, you know, get it away from you. The good thing about social media and all that stuff nowadays, you can pretty much design your feed how you want it. There's an algorithm, and if you like something, more of it'll pop up. So
Mhm.
start seeing that all the time. Get inspired by other people. Um,
That's what I was thinking
just
recently, actually, that some people do a vision board, but in a way, like a lot of people's social media feed is like their vision board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is one of the things that helped me a lot. Just being able to see it all the time and to see that I wasn't the only one who was doing this. You know what I mean? Like there's people
Mm,
that are doing this, and not only are they doing this, but they're thriving. You know what I
mm,
mean? So
mm,
sometimes if you're a beginner, you may have self-doubt because, you know, us as a species, we've gone so far away from our natural diet. And, you know, from a beginner coming from a standard American diet, they're like, okay, well, this is completely off. Am I going to get enough nutrients? This is crazy, but it kind of sounds right. And, you know, sometimes they'll have a little bit of self doubt. But if you can kind of design your feed and design what you see and be around people who are thriving, and you see that, it definitely gives you a boost of confidence. So that would probably be my number one thing to
awesome.
tell people. Yeah.
How do you deal with cravings?
I don't really get them anymore. If I do have
Mhm.
a craving, it's for fruit most of the
Nice.
time. Um, like you and I just talking about a jackfruit made me crave a jackfruit, but um,
Maybe
most
at
of the time
first
I'm
then, if you think back to 8 years ago, did you find that difficult then?
yeah, absolutely. So when you're transitioning, I definitely had some cravings for sure. And how I combated that was at the time I just ate more fruit. I would mentally get into a spot where it's just like, okay, well, you don't need that. If you are hungry, cool. You know, here's human food, eat it. You know what I mean? So I always say if you're really and truly hungry, you know, ask yourself, would I eat a banana right now? Or, you know, and if you would, if you say answer is yes, go eat a banana or eat whatever fruit. If the answer is no, then you're not truly hungry. So I just try to kind of, you know, that was my thing back then. And
Excellent.
just eat until satisfied, really.
So let's just make it clear. Where can people follow you, and what can you do maybe to help people? What do you have on offer there?
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram, and I'm at Raw and Radiant. That's all one word, RAWANDRADIANT. So I'm Raw and Radiant on there. I'm also on Facebook. I just got a Clubhouse. So that's a new app, but I'm going to be doing some discussions over there on like toddler nutrition and vegan toddler. So I'm on Clubhouse as well as Raw and Radiant. And I have some ebooks. I have the 21-day Radiant Cleanse. That's my most popular ebook. And it's just a pretty much transitional guide into the
Hmm.
lifestyle where if you want to try it for 3 weeks, that you could try it, and all the, you know, grocery list and things are there. So that's linked on my Instagram as well. And I also offer a raw group. It is a group where I send out a weekly meal plan for people who, it's mostly for people who are transitioning. It's
Hmm.
not for anyone who has been raw vegan for years, unless they want like different, you know, recipes or whatever. But it's for a lot of people who want to transition and they just need help with that transition. And it's $9 a month, and you get a weekly meal plan. You get, I go live every Monday to check in with everybody. You get that as well. And you get a Facebook support group where you can talk to other members who are going through the same thing that you are. And that just kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, surrounding yourself with people who are doing that, you know, making your feed like that. So that's what that is kind of designed to do for people. So that's where you can find me. And those are just a couple of the things that I offer.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So Raw and Radiant on Instagram.
Yeah.
So just what are your kind of plans for the future? You got anything you can share with us?
Right now I'm working on another book, and the book is focused on, for women, it's focused on how can you eat mostly raw when you're pregnant, because I did have a 100% raw vegan pregnancy as well. We didn't really touch on that too much, but I did have a 100% raw vegan pregnancy. And I get a lot of questions from women, and parents in general, like, you know, how do I, you know, is this okay and safe while I'm pregnant? What about breastfeeding? When I have my baby, when do they eat? What do they eat? I want them to, you know, be mostly raw, things like that. So the book that I am writing now is addressing all of that: pregnancy, breastfeeding, nutrition, and toddler nutrition.
Let's talk about that for sure. So you had 100% raw vegan pregnancy. Any issues, any concerns, any challenges?
Absolutely not. I would say I ate a lot more dates than I usually do. I had cravings for dates a lot. But no, it was a completely normal pregnancy. She was born at 5 pounds, 18 ounces, and she was born without any medication.
Wow.
She had no medication. She was completely vax free. I just took zero pain medication. I had no IV, nothing like that. To stay hydrated during labor, I drank coconut water the whole time.
Oh,
so
my
that
God.
kept me completely hydrated, you know, through 18 hours of, you know, having a baby. And it was completely amazing experience to do that like that. And, you know, after I was done, I was just like, oh my God, I did it. I had a raw vegan pregnancy. I had a birth, and it was, you know, super great.
And did you, or do you take any supplements along with the diet?
No, I think the most I can consider a supplement is I get barley grass juice powder from Daily Green Boost on Instagram. He sends me those, and then sometimes I will put them in my smoothies, but that's not an everyday thing at all. It'll be maybe like once or twice a month, but no real supplements at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And since the pregnancy, does your child stay on a raw vegan type diet or something a bit different? Or
she is very, very high raw, so I would put her about 90% raw. And the reason why she's not 100% raw is because she spends a lot of time with her cousins and my parents, and I wanted it to be a little bit easier on them. So when she'll have a typical day for her, because a lot of people ask me this, and you know, if someone's listening, they might be asking, well, what does she eat? She eats fruit pretty much all throughout the day, all day, every day. Like she just woke up. She's over here reading a book actually, but she just woke up and had some oranges and dates. But she'll have fruit all throughout the morning, and she'll have a salad in the evenings as well. Excellent. And then 1 or 2 days a week, if she's at her grandparents' house, she'll add like chickpeas or quinoa to that salad, something that my mother knows how to, you know, create. But when she's at home, she's completely raw. We don't cook.
Oh,
here,
wow.
But
so kids, I mean, kids seem to really respond to fruit really positively all the time.
All the time. Yes. They she loves it. You know, when she was a baby, like I would just, you know, she would see me eat, she would see the watermelon, she would see everything. So she just kind of grew up around it, and she knows how how we eat. And to add to that, she's a competitive gymnast at this point. She's 4 years old, and they made her, and they put her on the competitive team this year, or, you know, at 4, this is the youngest she could have done it. And just for anyone who's thinking, well, you know, a toddler cannot thrive on a plant-based diet, they absolutely can. Her gym owner, the person who owns her gymnastics gym, they came to my husband and I one day when she was 3. She just turned 4, and they were like, I've owned gymnastics gyms for 40 years, and your daughter isn't normal. She's super strong, and I have 12-year-olds who can't do what she does on the bar. So she's super strong, and I definitely attribute that to the pregnancy and just how I feed her. So
that's fantastic. I really do think that people sometimes think that a raw vegan diet would make a person, like, your bones would be weaker or your muscles would be
Yeah.
weaker, but I think it's the opposite. I think people
It's
get stronger.
definitely the opposite. And I just don't understand how people can think that. But I mean, I guess, like, once, you're educated, you and I are kind of educated on the topic, but, you have to realize, for anyone who's a beginner listening, you really have to realize you're getting more nutrition.
Okay, so well, thank you very much for joining us today, Ashley, and obviously wishing you a lot of success in the future. Just to let everyone know, if you want to check out other podcasts, it's the Love Fruit podcast. You can go to fruitfest.co.uk to learn more and subscribe and follow us there. So, Ashley, what would be like your last kind of words of wisdom and advice for people that are listening?
I would say don't be scared to do it. Just do it, and try to make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating tons of fruit. When you're eating a raw food diet, the basis of a raw food diet is fruit, and living food. Life promotes life, you guys. So even if you're not going to ever be 100% raw, increase your raw food intake.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone for listening and watching the Love Fruit podcast. Go and follow Ashley at Raw Radiant Health and check out her books and everything else. And we look forward to hearing from all of you about your own raw journey. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you. Please call me back.